Hello, everybody. We are back with another episode of the Hot Girls Healing Podcast with Salenna Green. I am Salenna Green. Welcome in. This is the Hot Girls Healing Podcast, a safe space for everybody. So join us. Today we are going to be talking about Black romance with the one and only Beverly Jenkins. So as usual, I will take a moment to introduce Beverly as I know her to be, the author of 12 books on my Kindle and more. A woman who is a great stewardess of Black history, someone who knows a lot about our history and is so generous in her offerings. But Beverly, let me give you a moment to introduce yourself, and then we'll jump right into the conversation.
Okay, well, thank you for having me. I've been looking forward to our chat. And yeah, first book published in 94, so I've been doing this for a few years. So, and I love what I do. I love writing Black romance. So take it away.
And we are grateful that you do. Okay, so the first question that I have is just like, why? Why write historical romance? Why focus on Black history? What drew you to your path?
Basically, it was the first thing that was sold. So, I had really no intentions of being a writer. All I ever wanted to do in life was work in a library. And I was doing that. And the market was basically closed to African-American mass market fiction back then. Excuse me. So I was just working on this story after work. And a colleague at the library where I was working at Park Davis, which was one of the first big pharma companies. They started in Detroit, and they had moved to Ann Arbor, Michigan, just where I was going to be employed. And my colleague had gotten a romance published, and we were celebrating her. And I told her about this little story I was working on, because I was writing just for me. Because like I said, there was nothing on the bookshelves. There was nothing in the movies. I mean, this is probably mid-'80s. And so she wanted to see it. So I brought it in, and she said, you really ought to see about getting this published. And with the market being closed and nobody really buying Black romance, I asked her, well, where,
Right.
So I tell people that she harassed me every day. Did you find an agent? Did you find So finally, to shut her up, basically, and I don't know how I found my first agent. Her name was Vivian Stevens. And Vivian was a big-time editor. She's a Black woman. Big-time editor at Dell Publishing back then. There are a lot more publishing companies back then than there are now. And she basically started American romance.
Wow.
Yeah, she also founded Romance Writers of America. But I don't know if I came across her in a magazine. I don't know. But anyway, I found her address and sent her my little very, very bad manuscript. Because your first book is always bad. And she called me at work less than a week later and said she wanted to represent me. So that started me on the path. Lots of rejections, lots and lots and lots of rejections, because New York didn't know what to do with a 19th century story with Black people that didn't involve slavery. So my story was in one of the historic African-American towns after the Great Exodus of 1870, and they were on the plains of Kansas, where I like to put my stories where Black people actually walked. So I based it on Nicodemus, Kansas. And so New York was like, okay, this is a great story, but we don't have a box for this. there's no slavery, there's no roots, no, what are we supposed to do with this? So, the executive editor at Avon Books, this has nothing to do with the makeup people, called me on my husband's birthday, June 3rd, 1993, and said they wanted to buy the book. So it was published the summer after that, alongside a group of African-American contemporary romance writers through Kensington Publishing, which was the Arabesque books, and that was Rochelle Allers and Donna Hill and Betty Ford and those ladies. So summer 94, we call it the Summer of Black Love because that sort of kicked everything off. So basically that's the long but short answer to how I got started.
Wow, and the rest was history.
Yeah, the rest is definitely history, yeah.
Wow. Say that. Okay, I love that. I love that you really took the opportunity and really the risk of writing something that wasn't already popular. There wasn't already a market for it. You really made that happen. Aquarius teens, really.
Yeah. I mean, and I read everything. I'm a big fantasy fan, and there are a lot of Black romance readers out there. There are tons of them out here now. So we were reading, white romance, because love a great love story.
Yes.
Even though it didn't reflect anybody that looked like me or you or, my sisters or, my aunties or anything like that. But the market was there. And when those books started selling, publishing realized that, oh, these Black women buying these books.
Yes.
So they kept offering me contracts and I kept writing books. So now I think I'm
I know that's right.
Yeah, I think I'm up to 50 or something like that now. But
yes.
Yeah, so that's the story.
Say that. And you know what? The thing about it is I also did read those. I read the white romances. Nora Roberts, that's my girl. Okay.
Yeah.
But the thing about it is I demand representation. I was doing the mental work to change the characters in my mind.
Right.
They'd be like blue eyes, I'd be like brown eyes. They'd be brown eyes.
Yeah. We were all doing that. Alyssa Cole, who also writes, Alyssa writes everything. She writes romance. She writes, and she said when she was growing up in New York that one of her teachers, fairy tale books or whatever he was passing out in elementary school. And he had changed every all of the white characters into brown faces. And so, that sort of kicked her off with writing about people who look like her. So, yeah, I mean, we change it, make it more representative because, representation matters. It really does.
It really does. And I can't even tell you how happy I am every time I start. I'm actually rereading some of the books that are on my Kindle because I'm just into these stories and I'd be missing the characters. So I'm let me go see what Rain is up to.
Yeah. And the beauty of that is that I think the first Black romance was published, I think in 90, maybe 89 or 90. And then there was one more with Sandra Kitt. The first one was by Rosalind Wells. And the second one was by Sandra Kitt. So you could probably, you could count them on one hand. And now, that we're in the 21st century, there's so many young Black women and Black men of color who are writing romance. So, no matter what heat level you want, no matter what, you want a little bit of intrigue. I mean, if you want a little mystery, if you want lesbian, I mean, there's somebody that's out here giving you what you want, which is the beauty of romance, because you can write in so many different forms and shapes and manners. So, yeah.
And that's why I really love your stories because, yes, I'm here for the romance. Yes, I'm here for the imagery, the way that you describe the beauty of the Black form, the Black person. I love that. But what I also love is just the historical context, that there's actually a storyline. When I was talking about Black romance with my family, they're talking about, the books that you just read for the sex. And I was like, y'all are wilding right now.
Yeah.
That is not what this is. There is a storyline. There is a plot. There is intrigue. Okay.
Yeah. I give you history and then I give you a treat. And I give you more history and I give you, another treat. But I'm as proud of the love story as I am of the history, which is why you get the bibliography in the backs of the books. So in case you want to do more research on, say, Harriet Tubman Spying or the Black and Brown Outlaws or Lawmen of Indian Territory, there's sites in the backs of the books where you can go and look this stuff up. So,
and I do be gobbling up those little author's notes at the end, because that's where, I'm always like, oh, I can't wait to find out what real history was taken and put into this book. And I didn't know about some of the history before I read your books. I didn't know about, powerful Creole families and the fact that they had slaves. They had money, so they had slaves, and they were affected by, the ending of enslavement. And so that's just the legal ending. And so that's just the way I'm learning history, I'm learning my own people's history in a way that I've never had it presented to me before.
Yeah, it's very reader friendly. Not very many people know about the Black female doctors that I highlight with Vivid. A lot of people don't know about the Black holidays that we celebrated, like, Martyrs Day, which celebrated the death of John Brown. People don't know about Bass Reeves, who some historians think that the Lone Ranger was based on. He's a Black U.S. Deputy Marshal in Indian Territory. So you take all of this great history that's just sort of been neglected or hidden or buried, and you weave it through a good story with a positive heroine and a positive Black man, and you invent what I did, my own little corner of the writing world.
Yes.
But now we got young girls who are writing historicals too. So, and that's a wonderful thing, because I've been out here by myself for a long ass time. So, yeah. And
I love that so much.
And there's no test on Friday for the history, so that makes it even better.
Yes. Say that, because I love history, but I do have testing anxiety, so I can't really do the two together. Okay, so I want to actually ask you something that also came up with my family when I was talking about this, because I have 9 sisters and then my mama. And we were talking, not all of the 9 sisters, but me and a few of my sisters and my mom. And when I told them that I was going to be talking about Black romance, they're like, oh, well, are you guys going to talk about the expectations that it gives Black women around dating? And I was like, what you mean? I was like, what y'all talking about? And they're like, well, when we were reading romance books growing up, admittedly, this was before 1994.
Yeah.
Say that. So this ain't on you. But they're like, oh, a lot of the books that I was reading, I feel like they gave me unrealistic expectations about relationships. And I was like, I feel like when I was reading a book, I knew it was a book. But
yeah. And a lot of, and that was one of the barriers that we faced when we were, you had a very large group of Black women who were like, yay, Black romance. And then you had, a smaller vocal sort of group that were like, expectations. But, what is wrong with expecting to be with a partner that supports your dreams? What is wrong to be with someone who wants you to walk beside them? What is wrong with a man who brings his money home, takes care of his kids? I don't think that's an unrealistic expectation, no matter who you are. So I always ask, the vocal folks, so what? Black women are not worthy of love?
I'm trying to tell you, because I was trying to figure out where the unrealistic expectations was coming from.
But that is that some people think that's a valid argument, but that's because they're not reading the romance of today. The romance back then was very rapey. And now consent is sexy. We're all about consent. And we are worthy. We are worthy to be placed on that pedestal. We are worthy to, have somebody bring us flowers. My husband brought me flowers every time I finished a book. We are worthy of being celebrated. And love is hard. It's not a 350-page book where, it's heavily, happily ever after, which is what you always get with us. But, I love my husband madly. I lost him in '03 to cancer. But there were days I wanted to bury his ass in the backyard. And there were days that he wanted to bury my ass in the backyard. But, you open yourself up to each other, and you try and do what's good for the partnership. You try and, pull in the same direction. And sometimes you're with the wrong person. Or sometimes it's your issues. Or sometimes it's his issues. But, you are still worthy of being loved and cherished.
So beautifully stated.
Yeah, that's just my take on it. I don't think being worthy is a unrealistic expectation when you're in a relationship.
I happen to agree with you very firmly. I think that sometimes, and this is taking a step into more about, expectations than it is about Black romance. But, they kind of entwine. I think sometimes we are afraid to ask for what we want in fear of not receiving it.
Yeah. And I don't think that has anything to do with race. I think that has to do with the way we as women are raised and the expectations of what our quote unquote place should be in the relationship. Because, this is a patriarchy, and, we don't rule unless you, on your own. But, you still got to love yourself, and you still have to ask for what you need, whether it's in bed or not. And some people are more comfortable with asking than others are. And some people, whether it's a man or whatever your partners, however they identify, is more open to listening to what you want than some are. Some folks don't care what you want, but that's not a person you should be with.
Right.
So like I said, love is hard, but it's something you gotta pull them weeds up every day. But it's a commitment. It's a commitment.
I feel like the way that love is portrayed in your books is really realistic. The women in there aren't always easy. They're not always coming with rainbows and butterflies. I love the stories, particularly with the Levesque family. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Because they're ladies. Okay, these men, they know they got it going on. They know they foreign. Okay, but the women that bring them to their knees, these women are not here to play with these men.
No, not here to play with you. In most of my stories, the men are just the cherry on the top of the whipped cream on the sundae. The women already got their shit together. And the man coming in is sometimes, why are you even here? I don't need you. Go play somewhere else. So Dorothy Sterling is a historian, and her book "We Are Your Sisters: Black Women in the 19th Century" is one of the books that I really, really leaned on heavily when I started this career, because she turned me on to just these amazing women. And the book is still in print. And whenever I go, I tell people, you need to have this book in your library. But one of the things that, she taught me, or she highlights in her books, is that Black women in the 19th century had 3 gifts. One, we worked, whether we were enslaved or free. We worked, we were enslaved because we was enslaved and we had to work. We were free, we had to work because our men were not, on the most part, able to access jobs that paid enough to put food on the table and raise a family. So the wife had to work too. So enslaved and free, we worked. Second gift, we were, as women, committed to social activism and our communities. And the third gift was our penchant as Black women to push the envelope on gender and race. So in other words, you just don't tell Black women there's nothing they can't do. You can't do that. Well, we're going to do it anyway. Because some of the first doctors in the South were those Black women that I highlighted in Vivid. And some of them were doctors in places where they were the only doctor. And didn't have anything to do with gender. We had Mary Ann Shadd, who grew up in Philly and wound up in Canada. And she was the first woman on the North American continent to own her own newspaper.
Wow.
So, so Black women have been pushing the envelope on gender and race, commitment to the community and social activism, because, when the white women decided that they didn't want us in the suffrage movement, we formed our own societies.
Yeah.
And we worked. So those women are the women I represent in my books, and those women are the women that we're standing on the shoulders of. And you on that mic, the first woman of any race in the United States to speak publicly to what they called a promiscuous audience. Promiscuous did not mean the same thing it means now. Back then it meant a mixed gender audience. So her name was Mariah W. Stewart. And this was like 1832, I think, somewhere around in there. But she was the first person to speak to a room full of men and women, because women were not allowed to speak to men in groups with men there.
Wow.
So every time you get on the mic, or I'm speaking somewhere, or Michelle Obama is speaking, or Oprah speaking, or whoever, or Hillary Clinton, it's because of Mariah W. Stewart. So we are standing on the shoulders of these women, because we're still doing that. We're still working. We're still, committed to our communities and social activism, and we're still pushing the envelope on gender and race. Look at our newest Supreme Court justice. So those are the women that I represent in my books. And sometimes they have one gift, sometimes they have 2, sometimes they have all 3. So long-winded conversation answer to your question.
No, but so important, because this is, that's power. That's power that we can claim, and it's power that should be acknowledged. I love the powerful women in your stories. They are so inspiring. They don't let nothing stop them. You know what I mean? But they have actual challenges. They face stuff. They have real emotions. They have complicated relationships with, the men in their families. I can relate to that shit. So I'm just like, there's just so much that I got from these Black romance books that really led to a space of healing for me. I wonder about your journey with your own self-healing and self-love and self-identity. Did your characters, do they reflect that? Do they tap into that?
I think we all do, to some extent. I was never told, by my mother. I'm the oldest of 7. I have 4 sisters. My mother had 4 sisters. So I had 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 aunts. I had 8 aunts. And we're a very, very close family. I got 21 first cousins.
Wow.
Mom was second of 7. I'm the oldest of 7. All our brothers and sisters had kids, So grew up in a really tight-knit, large family. And there was never a notion that there was something that we couldn't do. So, you were expected to excel in whatever your chosen field or whatever was. So to know that the world was, segregated back then. I grew up in Detroit. And so we had segregation in the North too. But it didn't stop us from having dreams. Didn't stop us from achieving. We grew up with a lot of self-worth. I never faced not being able to do something or being pushed back. Even I got no pushbacks on my books from my editors and all of that. So, but if you, I'm 72 years old, and you survive America as a black woman, 72 years old, you're grateful for the gray hair on your head because you're still here. So I don't know if that's an answer to your question or not.
Yeah, it kind of is. It sounds like, you had a healthy foundation. So, that's a great thing. It leads to, your self-love your journey of self-love seems like an expression that we all got to benefit from. And, I'm thankful for it.
Yeah. My mama was black before it was fashionable. I grew up with black history in my home because she was such a staunch black woman in her own right. My daddy was from the South. Daddy was from Florida, but my mama grew up and was born, raised in Detroit. And she's like, I don't know nothing about the South. She's, I'm a city girl. So, and she took that, and she gave us that as part of our heritage. And she loved her city, Detroit. Oh my God. So we lost her 2 years ago, but she was still reading. She was, still fussing about the state of the country and all of that. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about the place of Black history in your home as you were growing up, your relationship with Black history that you kind of had before you started writing romance?
Okay, we'll start with my mom. I've been able to trace my family back to the first census that Black people were on, 1870. Because before then, if you were enslaved, you didn't have a name. You had a name, but you didn't have a name on the rolls. You were just slave, age, gender. I have a girlfriend named Angela, who I call one of the ancestor divas, because they do the genealogy for a lot of lawsuits, and they going through backwoods, grabbing church books from old churches and people's names in it and all that. I call them the ancestor divas. So she did my family because my mom's family name is so unique. And she was able to trace us back to the first census. His name was Aaron. He was a farmer. His wife's name was Clarissa. She was a housewife. Neither one of them could read or write, because that's in the census also, whether you're literate or not. So 2 generations later, and he was born in Alabama. 2 generations later, they're in Kentucky. And the grandfather, which was my great-grandfather on my mom's side, was a preacher. I could read. And his wife was, what we call the first lady, and she could read. So they've always been very, very proud of who they are. And then on my mother's side of my grandmother's side of the family, her grandfather, which would be my great-grandfather, was Muslim. He converted in 1930, and he had been to Mecca, he had been to Medina, he had, done his Hajj, worked for the railroad, worked for Ford Motor Company. I think the very first time I saw him, I was probably 5 years old. And he was sitting at my grandmother's, table. I remember I was eating breakfast. I had this big old beard, and I was terrified of him, because he had this beard, and I'm a little kid, and it's like. But so all of that, made us who we are. Very, very proud of, and a lot of Black people don't know their history, not because they don't want to know, but because, it's difficult to do that. I could not have done this without Angela. I mean, she knows how to go through the National Archives and look up all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, and my mom talks about the segregation in Detroit, and she's an avid reader. And the libraries were segregated back then. Yeah, the libraries in Detroit were segregated back then. Girl, I got some segregation stories I could tell you right now. But, so she was born in 29. So she was in high school in what? 39 should have been 10. 49 should have been 20. So in the early 40s, this is, during the time of the Harlem Renaissance, libraries were segregated in Detroit. You could come in and read, but you couldn't take the books home. Now, I got girlfriends who grew up in the South who are my age. They would not even let them in the building. You couldn't even get in the library. So Mama would go to the library, as a teen, as a high school student or whatever, and you had to have them give you the books because they didn't have them shelved in with the rest of the collection. They had them behind the desk. And so she'd have to ask for them. And she said, and I would sit there for hours and read. So when I got my first library card at 8, it was 1959, 1960, whatever, it was no longer segregated. She didn't care what we read as long as we were reading. So, once a week I'd walk that 14 blocks to the Mark Twain Library and grab as many books as my skinny little arms would hold and bring them home. But, that was, segregation was so stupid. Okay, we would go to Sears for our Easter hats for church, right? And this is early 60s. You could not put the hat on your head to try it on. You had to pick up, and Mom would say, don't put it on your head. You'd have to pick that hat up, go to the mirror, hold it over your head, because it's a white woman that's standing there making sure that you don't put that hat on your head. Buying shoes.
Please tell me you could try the shoe on before you bought it.
You could, but only in the North. In the South, my girlfriend's parents had to take cardboard cutouts. But if you put that foot you put your foot in that shoe and it didn't fit, you had to buy it anyway because you're not going to try on another pair. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Don't make no damn sense. I'm sorry.
No, it didn't make no sense to us at all. In the South you had the water fountains and the bathrooms and and I remember being downtown at Woolworth's, shopping with my mother at what was, then our biggest store was Hudson's, and sitting at Woolworth's and sitting there for an hour trying to get a damn hot dog because they didn't want to serve you. So I bring all of this history with me in the 70 years that I've been alive and well and a black woman, and putting that in my stories in a way that teaches, because I do the crying for them. I do the crying for my readers because some of the stuff is so painful, so very painful. But it's a celebration of who we are and how clever we were and how bright we were and how we were able to make a way out of no way, you know, and make that the lemons that America has been giving us for, you know, Lord knows how long, and turning that into lemonade. Some of it's kind of bitter, but some of it was very sweet. So.
Yeah, you ain't lied, because there were moments. I'm rereading one of the books on my Kindle, as I told you earlier, right now, and I'm just rereading at the very beginning of the book, the episode, girl.
That's okay.
It plays like a movie in my head. But where, you know, there's Portia and her little sister and they're in the wagon, and they're being, you know, rushed out of there as, you know, these villains are coming, you know, with intent to kill, and they're watching their home that they grew up in, or that they've, you know, come to with their aunt going up in flames. And it's just like, I had to put the book down for a second because, you know, just really being immersed in that scene and the fear of a child, you know, that I know what you mean when you say you cry for your readers.
Yeah. You know, or,
that's real.
And the kids in the South in Night Song, and Carol Lee talks about the Klan and the night riders coming at night, and the ladies who owned the orphanage made the kids climb the trees so they wouldn't be found and killed, you know, and hide up in the trees, you know. So we had a lot of that, but we're still here, and we loved, and we had birthday parties, and we went to church, you know, and that's the part of our lives that the mainstream misses. You know, we had all this pain, but we had a lot of joy too. Because if we didn't have the joy, we wouldn't be here.
Right.
You know, if we didn't have the joy, we wouldn't be here. And, you know, and they're so, you know, it's a little bit different now, but, you know, Hollywood has been so focused on keeping us to remember that pain. To keep us from focusing just on how we had full lives. A lot of people don't know about the, you know, Reconstruction, and, you know, I think it was the 14 men who were in the House of Representatives, and the 2 senators that we had, and that, you know, the enslaved in the South started public schools in the South. I mean, they don't want you to know all this. They just want you to know that you were, you know, illiterate and subject to the whip, and that your families were sold, because that pain keeps you from seeing just how powerful we really were and still are. So
absolutely,
don't get your history from Hollywood, because they ain't telling you the truth, you know. So
that part. There's definitely this golden thread, or, you know, 2 golden threads, I'll say, of resilience and celebration that go throughout your books. Like, there's always a celebration. They love to get together, no matter the book. Certainly the Levesque family, they always celebrating about something. It's been
it's the picnic.
Other people will be like, I swear they always celebrating something every week in the book.
You know, it's the foundation of the picnic. You know, you know, regardless of, you know, and another thread is resistance too. You know, so you know, we like celebrating ourselves, especially that first generation that, you know, came out of slavery, and you're having children who are free. You know, lots of celebration on that. You know, because go ahead.
Oh, no, you please.
I don't even remember what I was going to say. And I get to rambling up here, girl.
Oh, gosh. I was just going to say, not me forgetting what I was going to say.
Thanks for hanging out with me.
Look, no, there's something going around, I'm trying to tell you. But I love, like, this perspective of celebration and resilience. It really does. It translates over time. It translates over our own development and the context of Black women, you know.
Yeah.
Even today, you know, since the pandemic in 2020, we've started to try to celebrate more. You know, even me and my girls, we try to do more to honor the work that we put in, you know, because whatever the small thing it is, we should be having a dinner to celebrate it. You know, we should be having a phone call. Like, we should have a picnic. There should be something to celebrate, because we get into this pattern, and certainly in the nonprofit sector, because my family, my mom founded a nonprofit, and I work there. My sister works there. We get into this pattern of, okay, what's the next thing? Okay, good. What's the next thing? Okay, good. What's the next thing?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, you know, we need to celebrate. I have a, you know, and nurture those friendships, because, you know, in a lot of ways, I'm still hanging out with the people I went to college with 50 years ago. You know, we still call each other on the phone and all of that. But, you know, more importantly, I have a group of sisters, you know, Black women that we travel every 2 years. I don't know if you saw the movie Love Between the Covers. They filmed one of our trips. We do history trips. We've done Savannah. We've done you know, the Hilton Head and the Geechee culture. And every 2 years we get together, and we don't allow you to talk about your husband. You can't talk about your kids. You can't talk about your job. You know, we just there to celebrate each other, and our history. And we all came together over books. We met each other online with books. So, you know, and when people see the movie, or when, you know, when I post the pictures of, we all went to Key West for my 65th birthday. You know, I think it was 30 of us. And I post the pictures, and people are like, well, I want to go next time. I'm like, you got girlfriends. Put your own trip together, because we don't allow just anybody to come with us. You know, first of all, you got to be over 50. We don't do no young kids, you know. But do that. You know, nurture those friendships, because, you know, a lot of us have, you know, divorced. A lot of us are widows, and, you know, people say, well, you know, you're going to get married again? Hell no. You know, that's why God gave me girlfriends. You know, girlfriends will get you through so much stuff. So
they really will.
You know, nurture those friendships and have those picnics, and, you know, send a card for the birthday party. You know, send some flowers to you know, we send each other art, and we send each other candles, and we send each other you know, all kinds of stuff. But little things, because we're all in this together. And as one of my girlfriends said, you know, life is slippery. You know, we got to hold hands. We have to hold hands. So when you get together with your girlfriends, enjoy that time together, you know. Plan a trip. You know, go take the Black History Tour of Savannah on them little trolleys they got going through the city. You know, go to, we went to New Orleans and went to the New Orleans School of Cooking, and I had a ball, and went and saw Whitney Plantation, which is, it was amazing. If you've never been there, it's a plantation that's been, I guess I want to use the word redeemed, because it's devoted to the enslaved.
Wow.
And there is a large, I want to say it's made out of marble. It's been a few years, I don't remember. But it's got the names of the people who, and it was a sugarcane plantation. And it has the names of the enslaved that they could find. They brought the first church that was built in the area by Black people onto the land. They have a statue there that's called the Angel Statue, because so many babies died during enslavement because, no health care and all of that. And this beautiful ironwork statue of this black angel holding these children was just so, so moving. And they have the bell, I don't know if it's the original bell, but they have this bell that, was used to wake the slaves up to put them to work and before dark, before the sun came up, and rung at night after it was dark for them to go to home. Mm-hmm. And now you ring it in their memory. And I swear we must have rang, there's 50 of us going on this trip. I believe we rang that bell 1,000 times. Every time we passed it, we hit that bell. But, you can do those kinds of things to honor not only the ancestors, but to honor yourselves. I know a lot of people want to, say you should go to Africa, and that's fine, but I want to see my roots here. I want to see the way that we made a way out of nowhere after we got here. So we did Savannah. We've done New Orleans 4 or 5 times. I've done Allenstown in California. Just, I'm still learning.
I feel so emotional right now. I don't even know why.
And because it's a history that's been denied us. And when you walk in those places that they walked and died and lived and gave birth to and had birthday parties, it gives you a whole different sense of yourself. There's a place on St. Helena Island that's called the Penn Center. And it was one of the first schools that was built after freedom. In fact, it's one of the few places that the Emancipation Proclamation was actually read out loud.
Wow.
And it's on the water. And I remember standing there with my girlfriend. We visited there. We've been there 3 or 4 or 5 times. And I remember standing there on the beach and trying to imagine what it must have been like for the enslaved to be there, because when the war started, the white people left the slaves on those islands. They left. So there's nobody but black people up and down the coast. So I sat there and stood there and tried to imagine what it must have been like for the enslaved to see those Union battleships coming over the horizon. Did they even know we were at war? Did they even know that, it just gave me it gave me chills just thinking about that, to look up and see this big ass ship, and they got on them ships. They didn't wait for Lincoln. When them ships came through, black folks was like, get out of here. They jumped on them ships and sailed away, but a lot of them did. But I understand the emotion because we've gone a lot of places and cried. A lot of places and cried. So, and it was crazy going back to the hotel and having a good time and, toasting folks and getting drunk and all of that. But, to balance it. But our history here is so rich and deep that I don't have to make it up in my books. All I have to do is just tap into all these great historians who are doing the actual work that nobody's reading, which is a shame. But I'm standing on their shoulders too, using their scholarship to impart the history to my readers. So, yeah.
Wow. Miss Beverly Jenkins, everybody. I don't even know what to say. This woman has come up in this space and made me feel feelings. I don't know how to respond.
It's okay.
Wow. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
You have been just such a wealth of knowledge, of perspective. I really thank you so much for everything that you shared with us today and for all of your wonderful books. I got some more reading to do, okay?
Yeah, you do. It's okay. I got 50 books, so you got a little bit to catch up with.
And that makes me so happy. Miss Beverly, please tell everybody where they need to go to get your books, where they can find you, and how they can reach you.
Books are wherever books are found, in whatever form you want, digital, print, large print. I'm on Twitter at Author Miss Bev. I'm on Facebook. I don't do Instagram or TikTok. I leave that to y'all. Find me on the old people stuff.
Okay.
But yeah, you can. And I have a website, which is beverlyjenkins.net. And you can get all the information about all the stuff and what I'm doing in the newsletter and all that at beverlyjenkins.net. Okay.
Yes, and that is Beverly Jenkins, y'all. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Hot Girls Healing Podcast with Salenna Green, and I will see you next time.